Hey there, this is Jen T. Grace, founder and CEO of Publish Your Purpose, and I am here with Amy Yip, the author of Unfinished Business. How are you doing, Amy?
I'm doing super fabulous today.
I am so excited to talk to you just in general because I've always loved the mission and vision for what your book is about, but even just when we were talking before we went live of just kind of the impact that your book is already having, I can't wait to kind of dive into that today. So, before we get into any of that information, Unfinished Business is breaking down the great wall between adult child and immigrant parents.
Yep.
So, would you like to share just a little bit about the book? And I'm going to hold
Yeah.
up the visual.
So,
Oh boy.
yay, visual. I've got one too.
So
So
good.
I wanna always share the inspiration behind
Yeah.
writing the book. Outside of being an author, I'm a coach, and 3 years ago-ish, I had a client. I work a lot with the Asian community, so I was working with a Chinese American woman, 55, senior vice president at one of the largest banks in America.
Mm,
Pretty
yeah.
successful. And she came to me because she realized, I don't know what I really want to do in my life.
Mm,
So we started trying to figure out what's that next thing. And during our coaching, she discovered I want to do something creative and I
mm,
want to start my own business. And as we continued coaching, she said, "Oh, but I'm going to have to wait till my father passes away."
mm,
And I said, "What makes you believe that?" And she responded, "Well, I go into little girl mode around him, and I'm just afraid of his disapproval, his criticisms. When I became senior VP, he had said to me, 'Great, the next thing you'll be is president.'"
mm,
And she wasn't even willing to have these conversations with him to talk about her dreams and what she really wanted to do. And I started seeing this pattern in a lot of my clients where they would want to do something, but then they'd be afraid to, and they either wouldn't or they would lie to their parents about it.
mm,
And I started pondering, well, what are the stories that I have about my parents? And in the book, I call those stories myths, right?
mhm.
Because they're essentially stories that we have.
Yeah.
And I started wondering, what are the stories that I have about my parents? What are the things that are still holding me back? And mind you, Jen, at this time, I've done so much self work that
Mm,
I was like, surely there's nothing for me to work on. But as I sat down to think about it, I had a lot. Everything from my success will never be good enough for my parents to I married a white guy instead of a good Chinese boy, so I've
mm,
disappointed my parents. Just all these things, like I'll never be able to repay my parents for the sacrifices they made.
mm.
And so this was amidst COVID. My husband and I were actually stuck overseas in Ghana because borders there closed. So we were stuck there, and there was a rise in AAPI hate in
Mhm.
America. And with COVID, my parents being older, their health not being well, with the rise in hate crimes towards older Asians, I was kind of afraid that I would never have the chance to have these conversations with them if I didn't do it. So
Mm,
I WhatsApp to my dad and asked him, "Would you be interested in telling me your stories?" And his initial response, which really shows how he thinks, is, "Oh, but I was just a restaurant worker.
mm,
Your uncle was a lawyer. He probably has more to tell you,
mm,
interesting stories than mine." And it took a while to persuade my dad that I wanted to hear his stories and not my uncle's.
mm.
He was open about it, and that was the start of the book, and that was 3 years ago. And over the last 3 years, I spent 40 plus hours in conversation with my parents. And I
Oh,
will tell you, the first 20, 25 hours, lots of anger, resentment, tears, moments when I wanted to give up. And it was my husband who encouraged me to keep going back. And now on the other side of it, I'm glad I did. And so the book really is around sharing my story. But what's unique about it is that it also shares my parents' side. So it's not one sided, it shows both sides of the story. And then after each chapter, there's something called a date with your parents,
mm.
so that the reader could go on their own journey of having conversations with their parents.
I there's just so much to this, and I just had 100 thoughts pop in my head at the same time. There's something so beautiful about this because I feel like got to take you had this opportunity with your parents to repair your relationship with them or improve your relationship with
Mhm.
them. And then document it, and I feel like that's something that not everyone has the courage to do, not everyone has the access to do because maybe their parents aren't here anymore, and so I think there's something just so beautiful about how in order to even create this book, there was so much reflection and conversation and stuff that had to happen in order for it to be something that other people and other families can actually use as a uniter for themselves. What was that? I guess, because you said 40 hours and the first 25 were sounded like a little bit painful. So obviously there was some kind of breakthrough moment after that kind of 25th hour. So what did that look like? And what was kind of shifting for you that kind of led you to having these other 15 hours of greatness that came?
I'll be honest. So all those conversations at the beginning. So we first started, I didn't know I was pregnant. I didn't have a child. Amidst these conversations, I ended up getting pregnant. Borders in Ghana reopened. My husband and I ended up returning to the US so that we could settle down since I was pregnant.
Mhm.
And during that move, having the baby, we paused conversations. And when we restarted after my kiddo was born, I went back and I listened to those conversations.
Mhm.
And I was so surprised at what I heard. My words were fine. They were not mean,
Mhm.
but it was my tone. When I listened to the recordings, I had this, I don't even know how, it was just this, ugh, like,
Mm.
I don't want to listen to you. This tone about it of resistance, of defensiveness. And I heard it and I started thinking, if my infant grew up and talked to me like that, how would I feel? And it would hurt. Would I open up to my child and share my life story with my child if he talked to me like that? I would not. And
Yeah.
so that was this eye-opening moment for me of I need to change how I approach these conversations. I need to be more open, more kind, more curious, and not go in with these preconceived notions. And I was essentially doing what my client did. I went into little girl mode and
Mhm.
just got angry and upset, right? And so I started shifting how I spoke to my parents, and I spoke to them with kindness. And even if they said something that irritated me, I would go to the bathroom, take a break, take some deep breaths, and return more grounded so that I could have a conversation and really listen to them as human beings with dreams, fears, hopes, just like you and I. And
Yeah.
that's what shifted.
I'm glad that I asked that because I feel like that's really I think there's like a profound shift there because I think someone who might be, thinking about having a hard conversation with a parent, I can see how someone might look at this and, well, Amy's the expert. Like she's the one who wrote the book on it. But really, you're showing that it was a work in progress while, like while you were going through this whole thing.
Oh yeah. And even today, like there are moments when my mom says things that are triggering to me. And at times I'm like, man, I went through this whole writing of the book and this journey and I'm still getting triggered. But and that's okay. I'm able to get grounded and remember the stories she told me and remember this is why she's the way she is. This is why she's saying the things she's saying, and it's out of love, the
Mhm.
way she knows how to show it. And
Yeah.
that's the difference. Like I still get triggered and I'm not, it's like any relationship. You're going to have to keep working at it. It's not like, and I say this in the book, it's not like once you're done with the conversations, your relationship is
Yeah.
good to go, right? It's a constant work in progress.
Yeah. And this clearly shows that there was some kind of shift in your relationship with your parents during the process. But how about either toward the end of the process or now that the book has come out? Like how has your relationship now changed with them?
It has, it's so interesting that you asked that because so much has changed after the book published, after the book was already like in the works that isn't even documented in the book. So, one of the big things that has shifted is I'm a speaker. My dad used to say to me, "Why would anyone pay you to speak? I'd pay you to shut up." You know, jokingly, but still, that kind of burns from your parents saying that. And in July, my dad took me to the airport to go to a conference to speak. It was 6 in the morning, and I said to him, "You must be so tired. Thank you for taking me. Go home to rest. And he looked at me and said, seeing my daughter go do her thing gives me energy.
Oh.
And I was like, what? And another example, in May, I went through fertility treatment. So I was doing an embryo transfer and it failed.
Mm.
And I was so afraid of my parents, what they would say to me, because when my sister had a miscarriage about 8 or 9 years ago, they essentially said, you must have done something to cause it,
Mm.
right? And so when my dad called me to check up and say, hey, how are things going? My body went into this fight, flight freeze. I was so afraid of telling him it didn't work. But then I thought about the book. I thought about the audience. I considered lying for a hot second. And then I'm like, you know what? I got to stick to my guns. I have to just
Yeah.
be honest. So I said, it didn't work. There's no baby. And then I braced myself for
Mhm.
what was to come. And my dad said, you know, fate is an interesting thing. Sometimes things work out the way you want, sometimes they don't. Don't blame yourself.
Mm.
And my jaw dropped. I was like, who are you?
Yeah,
Who do
like,
you
what
think this
happened?
is? Yeah. What'd you do with my dad? And then my mom picked up the phone and I was like, uh-oh, here goes. She's gonna say something. I was ready again. And she said, Amy, are you crying? Are you okay? Don't cry. Do you need food? Do you want me to bring you something?
Mm.
Food is their love language. So,
Yeah.
she's trying to, and I was honestly so shocked that after I hung up the phone, I turned to my husband and I'm like, do you know what my parents just said to me?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. Those are such 2 solid examples, right? Where because you are kind of, it's breaking down the great wall between the 2. So it's showing that it's showing A, that there's a wall, and B, that it can be broken down. I think that that's probably really inspiring for someone who might have this kind of tension with their parents.
Oh yeah. And the beauty is that even aside from our relationship having transformed, it's done so much for my parents as individuals. Like something has shifted in them. So my dad, I used to struggle getting him just to go outside for a walk every day
Mhm.
because he's pre-diabetic. He needs to exercise and move, and I couldn't get him to go. Out of nowhere in May, he decided I want to go swimming every day. And now in Maryland, it's cold.
Mhm.
And once fall hit, he said, Amy, I want to continue swimming. So can you find me an indoor pool to join?
Oh,
And he goes there every day and goes swimming. And I'm
amazing.
like, what? I have no idea what happened, but something shifted.
Yeah.
And then with my mom, in fourth grade, she was taken out of elementary school. And so when I was growing up, I always wondered, why does she not know how to joke and be
Mm.
playful?
Mhm.
Where did that silliness go? And now, after having gone through all these conversations, she jokes once in a while, and she's kinda silly and playful. It's not a
Mhm.
lot, but it's a lot more than it used to be.
Yeah.
And so, like, something
Oh,
in them has also
yeah.
and my guess is that it is because I gave them the gift of listening.
Mm.
Nobody has ever sat down and said, "Hey, I wanna hear your life story," without any other intention but to just listen.
Wow. That is a really powerful statement too. Like how few people have that opportunity to just be heard without any other agenda.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah,
Wow.
because we're always listening to try to say the next thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Wow, that's so amazing. I feel like if people did nothing else but just listen to their parent's story, or I would imagine it's vice versa too, right? Where the parent is listening to the child's story. Yes? Are you seeing it kind of both ways?
It is both ways, and you have to be willing to give first and
Mm.
not have expectations that you're gonna receive.
Mm.
Because when you go in with the intention of, "Oh, but I want them to change, or I want them to understand me, I want them to hear me," then it changes the dynamics, and people can sense it when you're going in with, "Okay, fine, I'll listen to your story, but you have to listen to mine after."
Yeah, yeah, that changes the whole tone of all of it. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. So, talk to me about I wanna ask you about your launch and then some of the impact post-launch, because I feel like even just how you incorporated your parents into your launch plans, I feel like was so to me, it was just there was like this like a cuteness to it, but there was also like such intentionality to it. So, can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I had an in-person launch, which was just for friends and family. And my parents and I sat on a panel along with my husband, because my husband has been a huge part of this journey and he's watched the change, the transformation. And my husband is white and he was not accustomed to a lot of these things that I grew up with. So he was on a learning journey himself and watching me change and transform.
Mhm.
So with the in person, we sat on a panel. My parents have never sat on a panel, and it was they loved it. They loved answering people's questions. They loved sharing things. They kind of bickered a little because my mom and my dad have differing opinions. My dad is definitely much more traditional, and my mom's always been like, woman power, go do your thing, don't rely on men, modern
Yeah.
women. So it was just so fascinating to see them come to life. And then a few days after that, we had a virtual book launch, and there was about 40 people there. And it was my parents' first virtual event. And I think the thing that surprised me most was I insisted that we do it from their kitchen
Mhm.
because they have on their foil on their stove to protect oil splatters. And when my mom asked me, "Why do you want to do it from my kitchen?" I was like, "Because that's where all our conversations were. It was in your kitchen."
Mm.
She's like, "But the foil." I'm like, "Don't worry. All the other Asian kids, a lot of them grew up with foil
Mhm.
on their kitchen as well." And she was like, "Really? Other Asian families do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we're not the only ones that do." And she was
Yeah,
so surprised. She thought she was really unique, but yeah,
that's
it
funny.
was a great conversation. My dad actually cried,
Oh.
and I've only seen him cry twice. One is during the writing of the book when I asked him about my grandfather.
Mm.
My grandfather passed when my father was really, really young. So that was the first time. And then surprisingly, he started tearing up in front of 40 strangers virtually.
Oh,
Yeah.
so sweet. And so what I love is that it's very clear just the impact it's had on you personally. So literally if and your book is doing so well right now, but even if not a single other soul or eyes read this, I don't think it would even matter because of the profoundness that it has had on your relationship with your parents.
Yep.
However, the great news is that it's doing incredibly well right now and a lot of people are being impacted by it. So, can you just share like a couple of different kind of stories and I know we were talking about it before we went live of just other people being impacted by this.
Yeah. Someone just recently messaged me and said, when I was reading your book, it felt like reading my own diary and it's just so healing. And then she sent me a photo of her at lunch with her mom having a conversation revolved around the book, which was just warming my heart. Someone else had told me that, and this person isn't even Asian. It's this white 45-year-old male who contacted me and said, "I haven't talked to my parents in a few years,
Mhm.
and your book inspired me, so I contacted my dad." And my dad said, "Sure, let's talk. I'm happy to share my stories with you." And it was funny because he contacted me because he said, "Now what? Now what do I do?" No, I didn't think my dad would say yes. What do I do now?
Yeah.
So that's also something that really warms my heart because what I have discovered after publishing this book is there's this universal thing. It's not just within the Asian immigrant community, but many adult children
Mhm.
have tough relationships with their parents and they want better relationship with their parents. So the book is helpful for so many people outside of the community too.
I'm glad you said that because I was gonna ask you because it very clearly it says, between adult child and immigrant parents. So to me, this book has always been accessible, even if you don't have immigrant parents.
Oh yeah, completely. It's more the stories in there are very specific
Mhm,
about me growing up as a child of immigrant parents, but
mhm.
it is relevant for people who are not children of immigrant parents. My husband is actually now on a journey with his own father.
Aw. That's
right? And
amazing.
he's using the book as this foundation of, okay, let's have these conversations.
This is so good. This makes for such a good book club book too, because it really can help, if you're because I kind of want to ask you like the what's next for when somebody says to you, like the gentleman that you spoke of, like now he decided to do this, got an unexpected answer from his dad, and now is panicking of like, now what do I do? Like, is there some way, like I think a book club is a great way to do that because then other people can be on their journeys, you can kind of collab, talk about it, commiserate, celebrate, whatever it might be. But beyond that, are there ways that people can engage with you? Because I know that you do coaching, but can you kind of elaborate on that? And is there any opportunity if someone does go through this book and they're just looking for some extra support, could you be the one for them?
Yeah. So I actually coached a lot of people on their relationship with their parents, because what I realized is that the relationship with parents is oftentimes what impacts how we show up in the world, what we believe we can and cannot do, and how we do things. So I've coached a lot of people on healing their relationship with their parents. So definitely I can help with one-on-one. I've got a ton of resources on my website, including a book club guide, including it's called a foundations workbook, where it's, if you haven't talked to your parents in a long time, how do you even get started? What are
Mhm.
those easy questions to warm your parents up? So I've got that resource. And I'm also a speaker. So a lot of employee resource groups, different DEI teams, organizations, initiatives have been bringing me in to run workshops and facilitate these conversations.
I love that. And then even, because I think that with ERGs and employee resource groups or business resource groups or whatever we want to call them, for folks who aren't familiar, it's really kind of these groups connected by an affinity that are part of a larger organization. Most often, I feel like bigger corporations. Are you seeing that your opportunities are within specific ERGs? Are they like, are you kind of like in, if there's, an Asian ERG, or is it like broader than that? Like, what does that kind of look like? Because I'm curious for anyone who might be watching.
Yeah, I actually recently spoke for an organization, and they had three different ERGs co-sponsor, and it resonated with all three. One of them was a parenting slash families ERG. One was an Asian, and the other was Latino.
Oh, it's
And so
amazing.
the three came, collaborated, and co-sponsored the event, and everyone who attended really resonated with the content.
So amazing. And so, like, if you look to the future, like, what's next, right? Like for you and the book.
I'm going to continue speaking, continue running workshops. Some some ideas that are kind of noodling in the back of my head. One is some sort of a group program for people,
Mhm.
because this has come up so many times of, I don't want to do this on my own. Can you please just put together a group so that we're on this journey together and can support each other? So that's kind of noodling in my head. The other thing is a podcast.
Mm.
The reason I'm excited to do a podcast is I want to inspire people that this is possible, not just with me. So the podcast would be featuring people at the start of the journey and at the end of the journey, and what has shifted in their relationship with their parents and how that journey looked like.
I love that. Oh, there's so many good things that can come from a podcast because I feel like podcasts are one of those things that it's in so many ways kind of like a great equalizer of information
Mhm.
that is different because it's more multidimensional rather than just kind of reading your words. They're actually, if you're doing a video version, obviously they're seeing you, but they're hearing you and they're hearing the impact and the transformation that the people that have read your book and that you're coaching have experienced too. And that's really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I want this to be beyond, oh, Amy had all these great conversations, and, she's on the other end. And what about everyone else? So I want people to believe there's more out there.
Yeah, because it is that ripple effect, right? Where it's like you and again, like I said before, like even if your book did nothing, you yourself have received so much from this. But the fact that it is doing something and so many people are checking it out and so many people are excited by it. Like just think of it's like one of those healing moments for like the collective, which I think is so hard to achieve. But like it is definitely a piece of this larger collective healing, which I think is just incredible and beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And my dad has said they need to turn this into a movie.
Of course.
I'm like, okay.
Right, maybe they will put it into the universe. Maybe it'll be that would be a really cool Netflix series or something like that, right? Where it's, documenting the journey of people kind of repairing these relationships because
Mhm.
it's just you're living proof that there is, that people can repair these relationships and not to wait until it's too late.
Yep. Yep.
Mhm.
Completely agree.
So good. I'm so happy that your book is here. I feel like finally here because I feel like it's always, the book birthing process always feels like it is so long and arduous. Even when it is fast, it still just feels like it just can't come fast enough.
Yeah.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to kind of bring up or share?
I would say that I want to leave people with 3 tips as they think about, I want to embark on this conversation, but I don't know where to start, or
Mm,
what kind of tips would you leave me with? I think the first thing is to start with why.
mhm,
Know why you want to do this to begin with. What do you want the relationship to look like after? Because I will tell you, it is hard. It is worth it, but it is hard. And every time you have these big emotions, every time things feel like they're not progressing, you're going to want to give up. So, knowing your why and keeping that top of mind is going to help you to stay motivated. The second thing is to go into these conversations seeking to understand. And it's what I mentioned earlier, right? I'm going in to just want to hear my parents' story, to understand them. It is not for you to be understood by your parents. It is not for you to try to change your parents. It is only for you to try to seek to understand them. And it will change so much if you just go in with that mindset. And the third piece is don't give up. Be
mm.
patient, right? It took me 3 years. So it might take you a week to read the book, but it took me 3 years, 40 plus hours of conversations, lots of pauses because of the big emotions. And so just know that there is no rush.
Yeah.
Just take it as a process and it'll be worth it.
I love that. So succinct too. Amy, people can find you at both of your websites below. So amyyipcoaching.com or unfinishedbusinessbook.com. Also, your book is available wherever books are sold. Pick your path wherever you want to purchase your book. I am a big fan of bookshop.org and constantly promoting them because they are a B Corp, which just means that they have a commitment to the environment and sustainability and diversity and all of these incredible values that PYP shares in particular. So that is my personal ask is just, make a purchase at bookshop. They have free shipping over $25, so go buy a couple of books. Make it worth your shopping experience. But it's also available on all of the other platforms, and it's in hardcover, paperback, and ebook currently.
Yep. An audiobook is coming out in early 2024.
Yes, so stay up to date on that as well. Thank you so much for your time, Amy. I'm just so happy that the book is finally here and that people are already being impacted by it so quickly. This is so
Me
incredible.
too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. And everyone else, I will see you at some point in the future with another interview. All right.